Hi, this is Sylvia, and in this video I'll try to explain how to classify the expenses in profit or loss statement under IAS 1 and what to do when you're changing that classification. And today's question is very frequent, and it's really hard to say whom it is coming from because many people ask about the same issue, and for all these people I selected a question from Mohammed from Oman. Dear Sylvia, I'm auditing a company who owns warehouses in several locations and rents the warehouses to other companies. Last year, the company's owners changed, and as a result, there was a change in company's operations. Before, employees were assigned to the specific warehouse and worked in that warehouse only. Now, employees rotate and can serve more warehouses over some time period. On top of it, few administrative employees were fired, and warehouse employees work on admin tasks too. So we have a problem with classification of expenses. Before, all salaries of warehouse employees were classified as cost of sales because they worked in a warehouse. And now after the change, these salaries are classified simply as personnel expenses, and as a result, cost of sales dramatically decreased. How to solve this situation? Is this okay? I really like this question because it deals with two issues. Issue number one is classification of expenses in profit or loss. And issue number two is change in presentation of your profit or loss items. So let me start with the classification of expenses in profit or loss. Well, I often receive questions like how to present depreciation expenses, where to put insurance of offices, and similar. So let me say that you have a choice here. The standard IAS 1 presentation of financial statements does not prescribe how you should present your expenses. And yes, there is no mandatory format. And the reason is that every single entity is different in its activities and shows different profile of expenses necessary to achieve revenues. And therefore, the standard requires the presentation of expenses in profit or loss in a way that provides more reliable and relevant information about your own activities. It is true that the standard IAS 1 suggests two different formats. Number one, expenses by nature, and number two, expenses by function. And when you present by nature, then you simply group the expenses by their nature regardless the role that they play in your company, and you do not reallocate them among various functions in your company. So for example, the salary of warehouse employees and the salary of admin employees will be presented as personnel expenses. Similarly, depreciation of warehouse and depreciation of admin building will be presented as depreciation expenses. And the big advantage of this method is that it is very simple because you don't have to worry with allocations. The second method is by function, and here you group your expenses by the function in your company. So for example, the salary of warehouse employees and depreciation of warehouse are presented as cost of sales, and salary of admin employees and depreciation of admin building are presented as administrative expenses. Naturally, this method is more demanding, of course, because it requires certain work and judgment when reallocating your expenses among various functions, but probably it's more relevant for some types of companies. And now let me clarify that IAS 1 does not require analysis of expenses by function or by nature on the face of profit or loss statements. It is just a suggestion. And in fact, you're permitted to disclose the classification on the face of the profit or loss statement on some mixed basis. So for example, you present cost of sales as a function, and then you present gross profit, and then you present depreciation expenses, which is an element from by nature method. So this is a mixed basis. To get back to the first part of Mohammed's question, is it okay to present salaries of employees as cost of sales to the extent they relate to their warehouse work? And also, it is okay to present these salaries as personnel expenses if this is more relevant for the company's activities. So both ways are fine, as soon as it is more relevant. But here, Mohammed's question contains one more element. Change in presentation, because one year the expenses were presented as cost of sales and another year they were presented as personnel expenses. This is not okay. This is not permitted. In other words, IAS 1 strictly requires consistency of presentation. And it means that you need to retain the presentation and classification of items in the financial statements from one period to the next one. You can change the presentation, but only when there is a change in entities' operations and the new way of presenting would be more relevant, or when IFRS standards change. So yes, you can do it, as in Mohammed's questions, as soon as the operations in Mohammed's company changed, right? And this is also judgmental. But then, if you make that change, you need to reclassify your comparative information too. So it means that if you presented salaries or warehouse employees as cost of sales in the previous period, and now you want to present them as personnel expenses, you can do it, but you need to reclassify the salaries in the previous reporting period to personnel expenses too, in order to make the previous and current numbers comparable. So Mohammed's client needs to present the profit or loss from the previous period in a new format, and thus the cost of sales won't dramatically decrease, and the two statements will be fully comparable. That's it for today. Please read our disclaimer. I have to add it here. Please share this video with your friends if you believe it can help them. Spread the love and feel free to visit CPDbox.com, sign up for our free newsletter, check out our courses, articles, and many responded accounting questions. Bye, and thanks for watching.